I found my 12-year-old grandson, Oliver, in the garage at midnight, hunched over my hearing aid with a tiny soldering iron. When I asked what he was doing, he looked up with those serious brown eyes and whispered, "Grandma, you'll understand when I finish this." The next morning, I put in my hearing aid and suddenly heard my son Gary on the phone in the kitchen. "Yeah, the adoption agency says families will pay good money for a smart, well-behaved kid like Oliver. And once Mom's in the facility, I can sell this house and finally get on with my life." That's when I realized my grandson hadn't just been fixing my hearing aid, he'd been saving both our lives. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and subscribe to the Never Too Old channel. We're creating a community of incredible people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now, back to the story. I'm Vivian Thompson, 75 years old. I've lived in this house for 40 years, raised my son here, and now I'm raising his son too. Oliver came to live with me when he was 4. His mother packed a suitcase one Tuesday morning and never looked back. She just left a note on the kitchen counter. "I can't do this anymore." Gary found it when he got home from work. I'll never forget that night. Gary standing in my doorway, holding Oliver's hand, both of them crying. "Mom, I don't know what to do," he said. "I can't raise him alone." So I didn't hesitate. "You're not alone," I told him. "We'll figure it out." And we did, Oliver and I. Anyway, he was this scared little boy who wouldn't sleep in his own bed for months. I'd find him curled up outside my bedroom door in the morning. So I started reading. To him every night. Harry Potter first. Then we moved on to everything else. Oliver loved stories about brave kids solving problems adults couldn't handle. We planted a vegetable garden together. He'd help me weed between the tomatoes, chattering about everything, school, his drawings, questions about why birds fly south. Smart as a whip, that boy. Always building something, taking things apart to see how they worked. Gary would visit on weekends at first. He'd take Oliver to the park, maybe a movie. But gradually, the visits got shorter. Gary started showing up later, leaving earlier. Always had some excuse. Work was busy. He had plans. He needed space to process. By the time Oliver turned 7, Gary's visits felt more like obligations than anything else. He'd sit in my living room checking his phone while Oliver tried to show him a Lego castle or a drawing from school. "Dad, look what I made." Oliver would say, "Uh-huh, that's nice, buddy." Gary would answer without looking up. It broke my heart, watching Oliver try so hard to get his father's attention. The boy would plan whole presentations about his school projects, thinking maybe this time his dad would really listen. But Gary was somewhere else, always somewhere else. 6 months ago, I had a small stroke. Nothing serious, but it left me struggling to hear. That's when Gary suddenly became interested in helping again. He started visiting twice a week, sometimes more. "Don't worry about anything, Mom," he'd say. "I'll handle your appointments, your paperwork, just focus on getting better." He'd talk to me slower, louder, like I was losing my mind instead of just my hearing. And he kept fixing my hearing aid, always adjusting something, always making it worse. Oliver knew better. He said he noticed something strange, a high-pitched noise, and how I didn't answer when he called me from the other room. He started watching Gary closer after that, quietly, the way he does everything. I couldn't hear much, but I could still see. Gary pacing the kitchen, phone pressed to his ear, face turned toward the window, always talking low, always just out of reach. I saw Oliver watching him too from the hallway, still silent. When I asked what he was doing, Oliver just said, "Dad talks different when he thinks you can't hear." And he was right. The papers came in a manila envelope with no return address. Gary handed them over while I was finishing a crossword at the kitchen table. "Just some medical stuff," he said too casually, sliding them toward me like a waitress, with a bad tip. "In updates, new policy language." He was already reaching for a pen before I'd even flipped the first page. "Take your time, but it's routine," he added. "They want it on file before the end of the month." I held the first page up, letting my eyes try to find meaning in the tangle of blocks and fine print. The letters looked familiar, but none of them made sense together. I looked up. "Which insurance?" I asked. Gary smiled, the kind that never reached his eyes. "Your Medicare supplement. New year, new forms. You know how it is." Oliver stood in the doorway, school backpack half-zipped, thumb hooked into the strap like he'd frozen mid-step. I saw his eyes flick to the envelope, then to his father, then to me. Something about that triangle made me put the paper down. "I'll read it over tonight," I said. Gary's smile twitched. "Sure, Mom, just don't misplace it." He left without taking his coffee. That afternoon, Oliver came into my room while I was folding towels. He handed me a piece of paper he'd pulled from the kitchen trash. Crumpled, half-torn, it looked like part of the envelope I hadn't finished reading. At the top, it said, "Residential. Care intake, patient profile draft." I sat down. Oliver didn't say anything, just stood there, arms crossed, jaw tight, the way his father's gets when he doesn't like being told no. I looked up at him and said, "You did good finding this." He nodded once and quietly left the room. It wasn't the first time Gary had brought me something to sign without really explaining it. A banking form, a change of address once, but this was something else. This had weight, and for the first time, I felt it in my bones. Gary wasn't waiting for anything anymore. He was moving, and he thought I wouldn't hear it coming. 2 days later, Gary showed up with company. They pulled into the driveway in a gray SUV that looked like it belonged to someone who used the word compliance a lot. A man and a woman stepped out, both wearing business casual smiles and matching clipboards. Gary waved them toward the front door like he was hosting an open house. "Mom," he said, walking in without knocking, "these folks are here to do a quick safety assessment, just some updates the doctor recommended." I was still in my robe. The coffee hadn't even finished percolating. "Safety," I said. "Just routine," the woman chimed in, already eyeing the hallway like she'd been given a floor plan. "Slip hazards, grab bars, entry access, for later." I didn't invite them in, but they came anyway. While they wandered the house taking notes, Gary stood in the kitchen and made another one of his phone calls. I couldn't make out the words, but I caught the tone again. That syrupy, practiced cadence he saves for people he's lying to. Oliver stood near the stairs, arms crossed tight over his chest. He didn't say anything, but I saw his eyes follow the woman as she poked around the bathroom like she was casing it. Later that afternoon, Gary pulled the car keys from my purse and dropped them in his coat pocket like it was nothing. "You shouldn't be driving," he said. "I'll take care of errands from now on." "Since when?" I asked. He gave me a smile I didn't like. "Since the doctor said your reaction times are slowing, it's just temporary." I didn't remember the doctor saying that. He left before dinner and took the spare house key with him. Didn't ask. The next day, I went to make a withdrawal and found my online bank access had timed out. 3 failed password attempts locked me out. When I asked Gary about it, he said, "I figured I'd help get things organized. You've got enough to worry about." He meant it kindly. He always does when he's 2 steps into a takeover. Oliver started spending more time in his room after that, not sulking, working. I heard the soft clatter of his keyboard late into the night. He never said much, but the way he looked at his father now had changed, like he'd stopped seeing a man and started seeing a blueprint. A week later, Gary handed me a card with an appointment on it. "Geriatric evaluation," he said. "Just a baseline." The tone was wrong. Too cheerful. Baseline for what? Just standard stuff. Memory coordination. Medicare needs a new profile. He said it so smoothly that I almost nodded. Almost. Oliver looked up from his cereal and said, "What kind of doctor?" Needs to know if you can remember who the president is? Gary didn't answer, but I noticed the twitch in his jaw. I found Oliver in the garage just after midnight, desk lamp on, little blue flame of the soldering iron, my hearing aid cracked open on a dish towel like a toy car he was fixing. Oliver, I said. He didn't look up. Grandma, you'll understand when I finish this. That was it. He kept working. Steady hands, careful breaths. The garage smelled like warm metal and old grass clippings. I stood there long enough to see him touch the tip to a tiny wire and count under his breath. Then I left him to it. Some things don't need a speech. In the morning, I did what I always do, put the kettle on, reached for the hearing aid without thinking. It whistled once, then settled. The kitchen came back to me all at once. The tick of the wall clock, the heater clicking on, the soft slap of the back door in the wind. I didn't realize how much I'd been missing until it was all there again. Gary was already in the hallway on his phone. He didn't see me. I heard every word. Yeah, the adoption agency says families will pay good money for a smart, well-behaved kid like Oliver. And once Mom's in the facility, I can sell this house and finally get on with my life. He said it like he was ordering lunch. I picked up a dish towel and kept my back to him. Let him finish. Let him walk right past me to the front door, still talking. Shoes too loud on the tile. The door closed. The house went quiet. Oliver was standing in the doorway to the dining room. No backpack, no jokes, just those serious eyes. I touched my ear. It works. He nodded once. I know, how bad was it? I asked. He came to the table and set down what he'd been hiding in his pocket. A tiny piece of wire bent wrong. This was pulled loose on purpose, he said. Not broken, pulled. He tapped the aid gently. I soldered it back and cleaned the contacts. It should be fine now. I watched his hands. A small burn mark on his thumb told the rest of the story. When did you know? I asked. He didn't rush it. The day Dad checked the battery. It wheezed after that. You stopped answering when I called from the hallway. He started making calls when you were in the room. He shrugged small. Didn't add. Up. We sat there a while. The kettle clicked off behind me. I didn't move. What did he say today? Oliver asked. I thought about softening it. I didn't. He said he's talking to an adoption agency, and once I'm in a facility, he'll sell the house. Oliver stared at the table. His mouth made a thin line. He didn't cry. He didn't look surprised. He just reached for the hearing aid case, clicked it open, and checked his work like a mechanic who trusts his eyes more than his luck. We don't tell him it's fixed, he said. No, I said. We don't. He looked up. Can I show you something? He took his tablet out of his sweatshirt pocket and opened a video he'd saved. Some kid explaining microphones in a voice too fast for adults. I can put a tiny recorder in the case, he said, tapping the screen. It only turns on when voices are close. It'll sound clean because it's right by your ear. I thought of Gary's voice in the hallway. How sure he sounded. How easy. Not yet, I said. First we listen. He nodded. Okay. We moved like it was any other day. Dishes, trash out. I folded 2 towels that didn't need folding. Oliver went upstairs for school, but I heard him stop on the landing and stand there just listening to the house. Gary came back after lunch with a folder under his arm. He talked like he was busy doing me a favor. Mom, quick signatures. He said. Insurance. Nothing major. I left the pen on the table and let him squirm in the silence, the way men do when they expect a yes and don't get it right away. He started pointing at lines I couldn't read without my glasses. I didn't put them on. I'll look tonight, I said. Sure, he said too fast. No rush. He gathered the papers like a dealer who'd rather reshuffle than play the hand. Big day tomorrow. Don't forget your appointment. For what? Baseline, he said, smiling. all standard. He left the folder. He took the smile. That evening, the house felt like it does before a storm. Not loud, just tight in the air. I made tea. Oliver brought his homework to the kitchen and pretended to do it, pencil still. We waited without saying we were waiting. At 9, the back porch light clicked on. Gary's shadow crossed the shade on the door. He stepped into the kitchen. Always on that phone. "Yeah," he said low and quick. "She's basically deaf now. We can move fast." I stood in the laundry room with a towel in my hands and heard every word. Facility, intake, paperwork lined up. A name I didn't recognize. Another, one I did. Mine. Oliver was behind the refrigerator door, pretending to look for milk. The light made a white square on his face. He closed it softly when the call ended. We didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, he whispered, "So, what do we do?" I set the towel down, smoothed it flat with my palm. I could hear the clock. Again, tick, 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 tick. "Tomorrow," I said. "You walk me through that recorder, slow. I'll take notes." He nodded. "We don't tell him anything." "No," I said. We let him talk. Oliver picked up the folder Gary had left and slid it into the drawer by the stove. He pushed it all the way in until I heard the little wooden thud. Then he looked at me. "We'll need a place to store files," he said. "Not your email, not the house computer. Your tablet?" I asked. He shook his head. "School uses that. I'll set up something else." He spoke like he was building a small bridge and wanted me to see where the supports would go. I let him. He's 12, but sometimes a person's age isn't the most important thing about them. "Grandma," he said, "you're not scared, right?" I picked up the towel again, folded it in half, then in half again. "I'm awake," I said. "That'll do." Before bed, I stood in the doorway of his room. The Buzz Lightyear backpack was still on the hook where he always leaves it. The quilt I made him years ago had a new seam he'd stitched himself, crooked but holding. He was already asleep, one hand open on the blanket like he was saving a spot. I turned off the hall light and went back to the kitchen, checked the deadbolt, set the hearing aid case on the table where the morning sun hits first. I wrote 3 words on a sticky note and stuck it under the lid so only I'd see it when I opened it again. "Listen, don't warn." The house went quiet. Not the old quiet, the one that felt like being shut out. This was the useful kind. The kind you can work inside. Tomorrow we'd start with the recorder. Tonight, I let the clock do its job. The next morning, Oliver set the hearing aid case on the table and pulled out a little packet he'd been hiding in his sweatshirt pocket. A chip, no bigger than my thumbnail, a sliver of wire, and a set of instructions scribbled in his handwriting. "This is a mic," he said. "Tiny, runs on the same battery. No one will know." I watched his hands while he worked. Calm, steady, 12 years old, but he had the focus of someone twice that. The soldering iron hissed when it touched the metal. The smell of burnt flux filled the kitchen. He didn't even blink. He slid the aid back across to me. "It'll start recording whenever someone's close enough to talk. Everything goes straight. Into this folder." He tapped his laptop. "Private. Dad can't see it." I put it in, turned my head slightly. "So, right now?" He nodded. "Right now." That afternoon, Gary came by. Loud shoes in the hallway, papers under his arm. He didn't notice. Oliver sitting at the table drawing in a notebook. He didn't notice me reach for my tea. He just started talking. "Yeah," he said into the phone, pacing. "House is worth 800 easy. Agency says they've got families waiting. The boy's quiet. No trouble. That makes him marketable." Marketable. He said it like he was selling a car. I kept my head down. Let the mic do the work. That night, Oliver played it back for me. His father's voice came through tiny but clear, right down to the scrape of his chair on the tile. Gary never knew. He thought I was still half-deaf, drifting around the edges of his words. He didn't know I was sitting there collecting them. Over the next week, Oliver set up a little system. Hearing aid recordings went into one folder. Screenshots from Gary's laptop went into another. He showed me how he'd done it. Guessed the password. Birth year reversed. Too easy. The emails were all there. Messages to an agency, money transfers, even notes about a realtor he'd already contacted. "He's moving fast," Oliver whispered one night. I nodded. So are we. Not everything went smoothly. Gary started watching Oliver closer, noticed him asking questions, hanging around in rooms he didn't belong. One evening, I heard him snap. "Don't snoop, Oliver. Kids don't understand adult business." Oliver kept his eyes down, but his jaw set. I knew that look. He wasn't scared. He was filing it away. Later upstairs, he whispered through my doorway, "He's getting suspicious. If he tries to send me away..." He didn't finish the sentence. I didn't need him to. By the end of that week, we had enough to see the whole picture. Gary wasn't guessing. He wasn't planning in the abstract. He'd already moved $50,000 from my accounts. He'd already filled out the adoption papers. He wasn't thinking about if. He was thinking about when. And thanks to Oliver, I could hear every step he took toward it. Gary came by Sunday afternoon with a thick folder. He set it right on the kitchen table, pen on top, like he was closing a sale. "Mom, this is the last bit. Sign where I show you and we can put all this stress behind us." I slid my glasses on slowly and flipped the first page. Power of attorney. Another one labeled residential care intake. At the back, adoption forms. Oliver leaned against the counter, arms crossed, not saying a word. "What's all this for?" I asked. Gary smiled too wide. "Just standard paperwork. Don't get hung up on the language. It's just to help me manage things. Doctor's finances. You don't need the hassle." I nodded vaguely, tilted my head like I couldn't quite follow. "If you say so." He relaxed, thinking he had me. That's when his phone buzzed. He picked it up without a thought and turned a little toward the window, still close enough for the mic in my hearing aid to catch every word. "Yeah, I've got the papers right here. She doesn't even know what she's signing. Once this is filed, I've got control. Facility gets her, agency gets the boy. Realtor lists the house, then I'm out of here. Finally, a clean slate." I didn't move. I kept my eyes on the page like I was squinting at the fine print. Oliver shifted just slightly and met my eyes across the room. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. We both knew Gary had just handed us exactly what we needed. Gary ended the call, dropped the phone on the counter, and tapped the pen against the folder. "We'll sign tomorrow. First thing, then things move fast." I slid the folder back toward him. "Tomorrow then," I said. He left it there anyway and walked out humming. The house went quiet again. The recorder was still running. Gary showed up the next week with company again. This time it wasn't strangers, with clipboards. It was a man in a pressed shirt carrying a leather briefcase. He looked like someone who'd sell you a mortgage you didn't need. Gary grinned too much as he walked him in. "Mom, this is Dr. Lewis. He's here to do a quick evaluation. Just routine, won't take long." I was sitting in the living room with my knitting in my lap. I didn't move right away. I just watched the man put his briefcase on the coffee table like it belonged there. "Evaluation?" I said. Dr. Lewis smiled like he already knew the answers. "Just a few questions, ma'am. Nothing to worry about. It's for your records." Gary stood behind him, arms folded, watching me. I nodded slowly. "All right?" The questions started simple. "What year is it? Who's the president? Can you remember 3 words? Apple, chair, blue?" I answered calm, even let my voice drag just a little, just enough to make him think he was right. Oliver sat in the corner with his schoolbook open. He wasn't reading, he was listening. When Dr. Lewis finished scribbling notes, Gary jumped in. "You see, she needs support. A facility is the best option, safe, professional." The man nodded, snapped his folder shut. "I'll write the recommendation tonight." They both smiled like the deal was already done. I kept my face blank, didn't give them anything, just folded my knitting back into the basket. Later, in the kitchen, Gary leaned over the table and pushed the papers at me again. His voice was sharp now. No more fake patience. "Mom, this needs to get signed. You're not safe here on your own. And Oliver, he needs stability. A real family." Oliver stiffened. "I am family," he said low. Gary shot him a look. "You're 12. You don't understand how this works." I touched the pen but didn't pick it up. "What happens if I don't sign?" Gary leaned close. His voice dropped. "Then the state decides, and believe me, Mom, they won't be as kind as I'm being." He thought that sounded merciful. He didn't notice the little green light on Oliver's laptop across the room, recording every word. That night, Oliver played it back for me. Gary's voice filled the kitchen, cold and sharp. "You're not safe. Oliver needs a real family. If she doesn't sign, the state decides. Proof. More proof than we already had." Oliver's face was pale in the glow of the screen. "Grandma, he's serious." "I know," I said. "That's why we're letting him talk." 2 days later, Gary came back angrier. He didn't bother with a smile, didn't knock, just walked in and dropped a new stack of papers. "Sign them today. No more delays." I let my hands tremble slightly as I reached for the folder. He thought it was weakness. The truth was, I was steady as stone inside. Oliver slid closer to me like he was bracing. Gary noticed. "You're going to a facility," he snapped at me, then at Oliver. "And you're going somewhere that can actually take care of you. Both of you are dragging me down." Oliver's chair scraped back hard against the tile. His mouth opened, but I caught his sleeve before he spoke. I shook my head just once. He swallowed whatever he was about to say and sat back down. I opened the folder. My glasses slid a little down my nose. The words blurred on purpose. I looked up at Gary. "I'll think about it," I said. His jaw tightened. "You don't have time to think. These are already processing." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard, the wall shook. When the silence came back, Oliver whispered, "He thinks he's already won." I touched the hearing aid. "Good. That means he'll keep talking." Oliver nodded. "We've got enough, right?" "Not yet," I said. "We let him push harder. The harder he pushes, the clearer it gets." Oliver leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. Then we wait. We sat there in the kitchen, the folder still on the table between us. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. Gary thought he was closing in. The truth was, every step he took just tightened the noose around his own neck. The email had already gone. Oliver pressed send, not me. We sat together at the table, the laptop screen glowing like a watchful eye. It carried the recordings, the bank screenshots, the drafts Gary printed, the adoption emails, everything. After the whoosh of the email, the kitchen went quiet again. Just the old clock ticking, the house waiting. 2 days later, the restraining order arrived. Heavy paper stamped by a judge. It said Gary couldn't call us, couldn't come near, couldn't touch the accounts. Oliver read it over my shoulder. "So that's it. He's out of our lives on paper," I said. "But in real life..." I didn't finish. We both knew. That night, Ramirez called back. Calm voice, same as before. "He's been served," she said. "If he shows up, call 911. Don't open the door." I thanked her. After I hung up, Oliver sat hunched at the table with his phone, tapping the side like he was testing a drum. He didn't say anything, but I saw the look. He didn't trust his father to stop. Neither did I. So, we got ready quietly. I checked the side gate, slid the bolt into place. He checked the chain on the back door. I wrote the case number on a sticky note and stuck it by the phone. He put the latest recording on a USB and dropped it in the ceramic bowl with the car keys. I filled the kettle, though none of it was for thirst. Bravery isn't loud. It's chores. The waiting stretched thin. We didn't turn on the TV. We listened. The lemon tree brushed against the window in little scratches. The heater clicked on and off. We waited more. 9:30. Oliver opened his notebook but didn't draw anything. He just stared at the page, like it might open. I started to say, maybe Gary wouldn't. Headlights swept the living room wall. A car door slammed. Heavy footsteps hit the walk. Then the pounding. Mom, open the door. The chain rattled. The wood jumped under his fist. Oliver stiffened. My hand found his sleeve. You think a piece of paper stops me? Gary shouted. I'm your son. You hear me? You owe me this. He rattled the handle hard. The screws whined. My stomach went cold. The doorframe shook with the next hit. Oliver, his voice cracked sharp. You think you're safe? You're not. Families are waiting. Good ones. You could be gone tomorrow. New house, new school, if she hadn't ruined it. The door jolted again. My hand trembled against Oliver's arm. For the first time in years, I thought, the chain might give. Gary's words poured through the wood. She's confused. She doesn't know what's going on. I'm the only one doing anything. Open the door, I whispered. He's going to break it. Oliver leaned close, steady as a post. His voice was low, calm. Don't worry, Grandma. Police are coming. I warned them when I saw on my tracker Dad was headed here. I blinked at him. Tracker. He gave the smallest nod. I installed it weeks ago. When he stayed over one night, I picked up his phone while he was asleep. Put on an app. He never noticed. I've been watching where he goes. I saw him leave the bar tonight. I called the police before he even pulled in. The pounding kept shaking the door, but my fear shifted. Not gone, but smaller. The boy had outplanned his father. He'd outplanned me, too. Gary shouted again. You think you can cut me out after everything? She's going to a facility, Oliver. You're going to a better family. This house is mine. You can't stop me. Each word landed heavy on the recorder in my hearing aid. Oliver's phone buzzed once in his hand. He glanced down, then back up. They're close, he whispered. The siren started faint, a hum behind his father's voice. Gary pounded again. Mom, open this damn door. You don't have a choice. The sirens grew. Red and blue washed across the curtains. Tires ground against gravel. Police, step away from the door. Gary froze for a second. Silence. Then he turned toward the lights, arms wide, voice rising. She's confused. She's not safe. I have the paperwork. Back up. An officer barked. Hands. Behind your back. He tried a step, half turning like maybe he could argue his way out. Wrong choice. Two officers moved fast. One grabbed his right arm, the other his left. They pulled him off the steps. His mouth kept running, but the chain in my doorframe didn't shake anymore. From the window, I saw him twist, red lights strobing across his face. He shouted my name, shouted Oliver's. Mom, tell them. Tell them I'm right. I didn't open the door. I didn't answer. Neighbors' porch lights clicked on, curtains lifted. People watched him being led to the cruiser. His voice cracked between curses and pleas. Then the door shut. The shouting cut off. The car pulled away, lights bouncing over the lemon tree before vanishing around the corner. The house fell back into quiet. Oliver leaned against the doorframe, pale but steady. His breath shook once, then he let it go. Is it over? He asked. For tonight, I said. He nodded. That's enough. An officer came to the porch, didn't pound, just knocked once. Mrs. H? Yes? Your son has been detained for violating a restraining order. Are you safe? We're safe. Do you need medical? No. We'll take a brief statement. Through the chain is fine. I opened the door to the length of the chain. He stood back, notebook in hand, young, serious. Did he attempt entry? He pounded. He shook the handle. He shouted threats, said I was going to a facility, said my grandson would be placed with families. The officer said he will be charged for violation of the restraining order. Thank you, I said. He nodded once and went back to the yard. Near midnight, another knock, softer. The young officer again. Just wanted you to know, he said, standing back. He's booked. Violation of the order. Detectives will take the financial and adoption parts. You'll get updates. Try to sleep. Thank you, I said. He touched his forehead like there was a cap there. Habit. We'll circle the block. We locked. The door turned off the lights. The house shifted back into itself. I went back to the kitchen, set the hearing aid case on the table. I turned off the light. The porch stood empty. The lemon tree scratched once against the glass and then stopped. I slept not all at once, but I slept. Morning came, plain mail, boring porch quiet. Oliver shuffled in, hair up on one side. Cereal? He asked. There's some. We ate with elbows on the table, no one pounding on the door. At 9:30, the phone rang. Ramirez again. Your bank has frozen the transfer. Detectives requested records from the agency and realtor. We'll be in touch. If anyone contacts you about paperwork, forward it. Don't respond. Understood, I said. You did well, she said. Oliver went to his homework. I rinsed the cups. The squirrel ran the fence like it always did. The lemon tree swayed. Normal things. You don't realize how much you miss them until they're back like they never left. I slid the restraining order into a plastic sleeve and put it in a binder marked House Legal. We set it by the cookbooks, a place we'd always reach for. I poured tea and carried it to the back step. Sun on my knees, yard steady. Oliver pushed. The screen door open. If he calls from jail, do we answer? No. He nodded. Okay. He let the door fall shut. I stayed a little longer. The day looked ordinary. That was the win. Not a cheer, not a speech, just steadiness. Inside, the clock ticked. The hearing aid case sat in the center of the table like a safe. I picked it up, checked the battery, and set it down again. For the first time in a long time, tomorrow didn't feel like a cliff. The house was ours again. That's what it felt like. Not because Gary was gone. He'd been gone plenty of times before. It was the quiet that told me. The kind that doesn't wait. For a knock or a phone call, just quiet. Oliver noticed it too. He started leaving his door open at night again, the way he used to when he was smaller. Not for fear, for ease. A week after Gary's arrest, the bank called. The transfers were frozen, fraud flagged, money safe. The agency sent a letter saying they'd never heard from me directly. Their file was closed. The realtor backed out the second. Detectives knocked. It was like watching a storm roll off over the hills. You still hear the thunder for a while, but the rain has stopped hitting the roof. Oliver kept tinkering, not with the tracker anymore. That was deleted the night Gary was booked. He started helping the neighbors. Mrs. Greer, 2 doors down, couldn't figure out her Wi-Fi. He fixed it in 20 minutes, charged her nothing. She paid him in oatmeal cookies. Anyway. He sat with Mr. Alvarez across the street, showing him how to use video calls so he could talk to his daughter in Arizona. Word gets around, Oliver said with a half smile. After that, Oliver started carrying a little notebook. People in the neighborhood would stop him. Can you look at my phone? My printer won't print. He wrote down their names and times like, he was running a small shop. He didn't charge. He said it didn't feel right. They paid him anyway. In pies, in lasagna, in a pair of knitted mittens too big for his hands. One night I asked him, "You sure you don't want money for this?" He shrugged. "I just like to help. It's fun." And it was. He had that light in his eyes when he worked. The same one I'd seen the night he soldered my hearing aid back to life. The same one that saved us. I got fitted for new hearing aids. Professional ones this time. Sleek, precise. But I kept Oliver's modified one too. It sits in the top drawer of my desk. Not for use anymore. Just a reminder. That little piece of plastic and wire turned into a shield when I needed one most. And the boy who built it became something more than I'd expected. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me over dinner, the same way he used to when he was small. Back. Then it was just curiosity. Now it was something steadier, like he was keeping score, making sure I was still all right. And I'd think for the first time, it isn't just me protecting him. He's protecting me too. The news ran a small piece on Gary's case. Local man charged with elder fraud, attempted adoption scheme. His picture sat on the screen between ads for car insurance and weather maps. I didn't watch the whole segment. I didn't need to. People in town whispered. Some shook their heads. Some crossed the street. I didn't answer questions. I just said, "We're fine," and kept walking because we were. One night, after the dishes were stacked and the lights dimmed, Oliver said quietly, "Grandma, do you think he'll come back?" "Not here," I said. "Not to this house." He nodded once, like he'd been waiting for me to put it in words. Life went on in small ways. We cooked, we argued about chores, we folded laundry. We laughed at a crooked lemon magnet that held stronger than the new ones. That was enough. So that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. If you were in my shoes, would you have trusted Oliver's plan with the hearing aid or tried to confront Gary directly? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more stories like mine.